All right. So I had a situation recently where the CEO, or excuse me, COO, two leaders on my company told me that I disrespected them publicly in a group chat. And the strange part was I genuinely didn't think I did anything wrong. I even put the entire situation into ChatGPT and asked, "Hey, like this is what they're saying. Did this actually happen?" And ChatGPT was actually on my side. Like, I mean, it always fucking is, really. But what happened next really forced me to confront something about myself, about leadership, and really how companies evolve. So this is um, this is kind of a follow up to my previous video. And honestly, I'm really proud of myself for how I handled the situation because it showed me how much I've grown from, all the inner work that I've been doing. So what happened was this, right? Apparently I had upset some team members in our public group chat. I didn't even realize it in the moment. One of them called me out publicly, and then that same person followed up with me privately where they called me out more. And I was like, whoa, okay. So I asked him, like, hey, what exactly from what I said is making you feel this way? And then I reached out to the other two people, the other leader and the COO, and said, because I only heard feedback from one person. So I asked them directly, hey, this is the way this person feels. Do you feel this is actually like what happened? All three of them agreed, and I was like, "Oh shit, okay, I need to get in front of this, like because that was absolutely not my intention." And before the call, like I said, I actually ran the whole situation through ChatGPT. I asked, "Hey, they're saying that this happened, this actually happened," because from my perspective, like it just didn't feel like that's what happened at all. And again, ChatGPT was on my side, but I still knew something important. Even if I felt justified, I needed to address this directly. So I had a call with the COO one on one, and then I set up a call with the other two leaders to meet with them, right? So first the call with the COO, and I want to go off script here and say this guy is unbelievably intelligent. He is the most, and I'll tell you what I mean when I say that, because I've met a lot of people in this space, and I've never met someone with this level of emotional intelligence before. Like when I say intelligent, the way I'm meaning it in this context is the way he handles high stakes emotional situations. Like the way he maneuvers through them with the level of poise and professionalism and consideration for every party involved. Like, you know how when God, this even just saying it pisses me off. You know how some people try not to pick sides and it ends up feeling like dismissive to many, if not everyone? He somehow does the fucking opposite. And I've never seen this from a communicator in my life. Like in business, outside of business, like I've never seen this in my life. He makes everyone feel heard and seen while still moving the conversation forward. Nobody ends up feeling dismissed, attacked, minimized. I've taken a shit ton of sales training. I've had a shit ton of sales calls. I've never seen this level, this ninja level of emotional intelligence in my life. And I didn't know that such a deep admiration could come from me, right? It's something I feel like I'm glazing him at this point because I tell him everything I'm telling y'all, I tell him like in chat. I like write out letters, you know? And I'm like, dude, I gotta stop, bro. I'm just glazing the fuck out of you, dog. But it is something I definitely want to integrate into myself. And at the end of the conversation, he told me something really interesting. He has a way of just delivering things, but he said he developed this skill from one being torched by people and also scorching people along the way. And that really hit me because that feels like I feel like I'm on the back end of that journey because I would be so pent up and so passive aggressive and have such malicious energetics because I'm like, how the fuck could you be operating with such levels of incompetence? And I was operating from that unconsciously, and then it just came out, and they'd be like, "Yo," and I'm like, "That's not my intention. Like, I think we can get better. Let's just get better." And they're like, "No, dog. Like, we felt really disrespected." I'm like, "What the fuck?" And I didn't notice it until today, right? So after the call with the COO, I reached out to the other two leaders who felt like I had disrespected them, and I apologized. But something very different happened this time. For the first time in my life, I did not abandon myself. In the past, I would have completely collapsed into guilt. I would basically condemn myself just so the other person could feel better. But this time, I approached it differently. I said something like, look, that was not my intention whatsoever. Here's what I actually meant. But I also said, I understand that it landed differently for you, and I'm sorry that it came across that way. So I acknowledged for the first time in my life, it's amazing. I acknowledged their experience without betraying my own. And I cannot tell you how big of a fucking shift that was for me and how good it felt, right? Because historically, I would 1,000 million, billion, trillion, gajillion % betray myself immediately just to smooth things over, right? But during the conversation, something else started happening. I began asking specific questions even before the conversation. Like I said, to one of the gentlemen, I said, "Can you show me the exact place where you interpreted it that way?" And this is a pattern I've been noticing from them. They weren't really answering the question, and that's when I started to notice something, that there might actually be a pattern there, right? But the purpose of the call, at least on that call, wasn't to expose patterns. The purpose was to repair the relationship. So I let that go for now, but that will be addressed sooner than later, because that behavior is not going to help us in the evolution of the business. But afterwards, something else became clear to me. Some of the energy that came out of me most definitely had a deeper source. The company has been operating for 7 years, and there's basically no data. And I didn't realize I was unconsciously operating from the perspective that I was completely appalled and judged them with absolute incompetence, that the only data point we had after 7 years was our retention rate. That was the only metric. And to me, it feels like absolute malpractice from a competence standpoint. To me, it felt malicious. It's not malicious, but if you've been doing something for 7 fucking years, struggling, on the fulfillment side, how have you not brought in outside help? They even said, that if they shut down the fulfillment side of the trying to get, not on the marketing, but we get you appointments. Now we have a fulfillment side on how can you extract as much value from these appointments. So we do sales training, right? They said if they shut down that and just went back to purely marketing, the CEO would actually make more money and he could just fire all of us. So I'm sitting there thinking how the fuck is this going on for 7 years? It absolutely blows my mind. So now, sure, some people may learn differently, here's a good example. My best friend is someone who learns entirely through doing things himself, right? I'm the complete opposite. I constantly seek guidance before I even fucking start, but he wouldn't go fucking 7 years without progress and not look for outside help. So I realized something, that this unconscious energy came through in my communication, because deep down, a part of me was thinking, how has this been allowed to continue for this long? And because I wasn't fully aware of that belief, right, it probably came across like I was judging them. Like I was implying they were incompetent or didn't care about improvement. And that's really how I genuinely felt. And that wasn't consciously what I meant, but that energy was definitely present. And if I'm being completely honest, there was a thought that crossed my mind during the closing remarks at the meeting. And a thought I obviously didn't say out loud, but the thought was basically you guys are leaders because you've been here the longest, not because you're the best. And that can be harsh to some, but it's an honest thought that crossed my mind. And before recording this video, I even asked myself, what if they see this someday? And honestly, I'm 100% okay with that. I'm not willing to preserve appearances if it costs me my fucking sanity. Even if the COO sees this, someone I deeply, revere and admire and respect, even if they don't want to be friends with me, even if they don't like me, even if I got fired over this video, I am 100% genuinely okay with that, because to me, it's insane that we've been operating this way for so long. Now, to be fair, the current leaders, the COO, and then the 2 leaders below him, they've only been there for a year to a year and a half. But still, how have we not studied this role more deeply? How have we not invested more into developing ourselves so we can show up at the highest level possible? And what's interesting is the COO actually sees this. We're very aligned on that, but there's still tension between that perspective and the rest of the team. And that's basically where everything stands right now. So, yeah, those are 2 things that I will 100% incorporate into my own business. One is public collaboration, because it's kind of shunned because they don't want people to know what the fuck is going on in the back end. And I see it now. And it's so funny because It's just like dating where you'll date somebody and you'll put on this appearance and then, 3 months in, you're finally showing your true self. It's the same thing with business. I'm finally seeing like behind the curtain and I realize why they don't want the rest of the team to see it because they might not stick around long enough, right? And so, but regardless of that, in my own company, it will 100% be 100% transparency and public collaboration at all times. Because it does not matter how long someone has been there. Someone who has been there for a day can bring an idea that someone has been there for a year, doesn't introduce to the company because they didn't think of it, and that could change a lot. And that is something I will definitely have as a value inside of my company is public collaboration and complete transparency on all levels so that the bottom employee knows as much as the top employee or the CEO, whatever. Secondly, is it's not going to be a tenure ran environment. I do not care how long you have been with the company, right? I care about your contribution, your impact, right? So if you've come on and you've been able to contribute more, in a week, and it's your second week compared to the person who's been here with a year, I'm not going to look at the person who's been here for a year and be like, hey, you ready for a promotion? Like that to me is like the antithesis of evolution is when you promote, the culture to be tenure, driven, right? I just don't, that doesn't align with me. Um, that's it.